Folks, if you're like me, then you love woodworking. There's only one problem: not enough time. I mean, between our jobs, our family, our personal schedule, we have very limited time in the shop. So this video series is going to help you maximize your time and give you excellent results on your project. Hello, I'm Chad Stanton, and in 21 years as a professional furniture maker and in the building trades, I can tell you I've made a lot of mistakes, which cost me time. So I'm going to give you my experience to help you avoid those mistakes and get great results. Now, I know you're anxious to get in the shop and build something, but before you do, there's 3 good rules to go by. Now, these are rules that Franklin Gottshaw came up with, and he's not only a woodworker, but an educator and an author on fine furniture. So, the rules are, number 1, it must serve a purpose. I mean, what's the point of building something if it doesn't actually have a function? Number 2, it must be well constructed. Again, why build a chair if someone's afraid to sit in it? And number 3, it should look good. Now, you'll notice that number 3, looking good, came beneath the other 2, and there's a reason for that. So let me show you a couple of examples of some good and bad designs. So this is a piece where I actually put rule number 3, looking good, in front of the other 2. So let me explain. This piece looks beautiful. Reason 1 is it's made out of cherry, so as it gets older, it's just going to get that darker patina to it. 2, I really like the soft little curve on it. It makes it more graceful. And then 3, I put a drawer at the bottom to kind of help balance it out, just makes it look more cute. Now, here's why it's limiting. Although it is made with good construction, I have mortise and tenon and rabbet joints in it, but rule number 1, serving a function and a purpose, well, I set out to actually make a bookcase, and you can see with this, I'm really not getting a whole lot of room for books in it. So it's kind of turned into a knick-knack shelf. Number 2, as you can tell, it's made for the corner. So again, in your room, I just limited where you can put this. And number 3, well, this drawer. You're really not going to store much in that. In my opinion, it's not very good for anything. So here's a piece that I feel fits the rules in the proper order. 1, it serves a purpose and a function. It's a bench, and you can place this just about anywhere: the dining room, your foyer, the front porch. Number 2, it's constructed really well. There's mortise and tenons through this, and wedge tenons to keep the legs really tight. And 3, well, it looks nice. It has an English rustic style, exactly what the customer wanted. Now that we have our 3 rules, this does a couple of things for us. 1, it sets us up for guidelines for better building. And 2, it's causing us to look at the pieces in a more objective way. All right, so now you're ready to start building. Do you work off of plans, pictures, or design your own sketch? I'm going to show you all 3 next. The best place to start building is to get a set of plans. And there's a lot of sources that you can do this. The first is in magazines. I think this is great because every other month you get plans plus the step-by-step articles and photos that help you with the build. If you want more project ideas, well, you can get books. Same thing. The books provide the step-by-step procedures, article, and then the plans. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced and don't need that, well, you can just purchase the plans. The plans have all the dimensions and the joinery on it that you need. Now, there are some disadvantages to it. The disadvantages is perhaps the project you were hoping to build isn't in this issue of the magazine that month. So a lot of people will go online. They'll find photos on Pinterest or Instagram, Facebook. They have the photo, but now they don't have the plans. Well, let me help you figure out how you can make your own plans from that photo. So recently, a customer of mine was online looking at photos of kitchens, and they fell in love with this bench. They asked me if I could make it. Working with only this photo, I had no plans, but there are ways that I can figure out the size and make plans of my own. Now, if you click on the link in the description, you can get the sizes of certain standard heights of furniture. From that list, I was able to look at the dining room table, and that's approximately 30 inches tall. A seat, standard height, is about 18 inches. Working with that, I can now use my ruler, divide this into 18 segments, and that will give me a unit of measurement to work with. Now, to make things a little bit easier, I took the photo and I blew it up in size. And let's just say for ease that 1/8 equals 1 inch. From that, I could easily measure the thickness of the leg, the depth of the seat. I could even figure out the components for the back. Now, keep in mind that this photo is on a perspective angle, so the stuff in the back is going to appear smaller. That's why I worked with all my references up towards the front. Now, to build this piece, I had to modify it a little bit. From the photo, it's much longer, and here it's shorter because I was making it exactly for my customer's dining room table. The other thing too was their children were going to sit on this. So instead of the standard 18 inches tall, I made it 19, so they sit a little bit closer to the table. The last thing I did was, from the photo, it looked like the legs sat in a little too far for me. I was worried about a kid standing on this and not sitting, and it tipping over. All in all, it looks really close to the photo, and the customer loved it. Now, perhaps you don't even want to work from photos. You're a designer yourself. You want to make your own unique pieces. Well, that's what I like to do. And from a pencil sketch, now I'm going to show you how you can make, build, and design your own piece of furniture. So recently, I've been wanting to build an occasional table or a nightstand for my own home, and I want to do it in the arts and crafts style. Here's some pencil sketches that I did. You see, I have several on here, but I finally settled on this look here. So just like what I did with the photo, I'm going to blow this up because now I have to make my detailed plans and measurements. Now, if I wanted my table to be about 28 inches high and I scaled it out, well, by the time I measured it, it was going to be 40 inches long. It's more like a small desk. So I went the other way. I thought, well, I'll make it about 28 inches long. And when I did the scale again, now it's way too short. So at this point, I had to come up with a different plan. And what I did was, I went with some graph paper. Using the graph paper, I could come up with a scale, and I changed the measurements a little bit on the length, but I have the height that I want. And again, using the graph paper with that scale, I was able to figure out the other sizes for the components. Now, there are things out there such as SketchUp, which you can get online, and you can do a digital version of your drawing on the computer. So even though I'm really liking the look of what I have here on SketchUp, I really want to work out the little fine details to it. So I've decided to make a full-size mock version of this table. Even though it looks nice here, there's a few more things you have to consider, and that is your hardware. Now, this has a drawer on it, so at some point I'm going to have to put a glide on it. If this was a cabinet and had a door, I'm going to need a hinge. And this is really important to have because after you start doing your build, you don't want to have to figure out then that the drawer is not going to fit because you didn't measure for the glide. The other advantage of having a full-size mock-up version is I can place it in the room where it's going to go. Is it too tall for that room? Is the lamp too big that's going to sit on it? And I can adjust it from there. But what I really like about having this is now my eye has a better chance to look at the finer details. And what I've decided on here is these steps, I'm gonna cut them back a little bit. And then I'm gonna move the edge of the drawer so it's gonna be in line with that step. Also too, I have these squares on it, and I haven't quite decided yet what I wanna do with the squares. Are they gonna go all the way through? Am I gonna put a button on them? I'm still not sure yet, but I definitely like the 3 squares. Now, on the shelf, I have the shelf being held in with these tusk tenons. And again, I have these tusk tenons close, and here they're a little bit wider. I decided I liked the wider look, and I'm even gonna refine it more, that I'm gonna have the tenon line up with the edge of the splat. Also too, you notice I don't have the splat on this side. Again, letting me decide, do I like it more open or with the splat in it? Having a full-size model definitely has its advantages, but I understand making one takes time and material. And if you don't have the time for that, I highly suggest that you make a small scale version of your project. Now this was real simple. Again, this is made out of scrap wood. I just hot glued it together, but it really helped define the details of the project. So I made this from my SketchUp drawings, which looked great. Once I made this, there was something that didn't seem right about it, and I couldn't figure it out. So I put it on my dining room table, and every morning it was the first thing I saw when I walked past it. Now I remember an interior decorator once telling me that when he does a room, he wants your eye to flow through the whole room. It shouldn't zero in on anything. And that's the problem that I had with my coffee table. My eye kept zeroing in on the stretcher. It wasn't right. I changed the stretcher 5 times until finally that one morning I go past it and I thought, oh, that looks good. And then I realized I didn't look at the stretcher at all. That's when I knew I had it right. And from there, it was time to do the actual build. So now that I've decided on my design, I have to consider the material I'm gonna build it out of. Now, if this was a really big piece, doing it out of solid wood could get expensive. So an alternative for large pieces is plywood. Plywood will have a thin veneer of the actual wood you want on it, but the cores, well, there's different types of plywoods out there. The plywood that I like to use is this veneer cord plywood. It's actually thin layers of real wood glued together going in opposite grain directions. This makes it very stable and gives it a lot of strength when you put a fastener into it. If you want a lower grade or more affordable plywood, there's what they call chipcore. And this essentially is large pieces of sawdust and chips of wood that they've put together with glue. The third type of plywood that's out there is MDF, which is medium density fiberboard. Essentially what this is, it's fine sawdust mixed with resin and glue and other chemicals. And I highly suggest that if you're gonna work with this, you wear a good mask with it. Now, MDF can weigh about twice as much as your veneer cord plywood, and the holding properties for any kind of fasteners is quite poor. So I've decided I'm gonna build my project out of solid wood, and in this case, white quarter sawn oak. Now when you're dealing with solid wood, there are some challenges. In this case, wood movement. And that wood movement is gonna come into play into my joinery. So let me show you some examples of the issues that we're up against and how we're gonna deal with that wood movement problem. So on this project, the biggest piece is the top. And this is where I'm gonna have the most amount of wood movement. Now wood expands and contracts through the width of it because it's grabbing and taking in moisture on the end grain. It's not gonna be affected so much length, but it will in width. And for that, I have to make sure that this can move. Otherwise, it can cup and even split. So here's how I'm gonna do that. On the aprons, I'm gonna run a groove on the inside of it. That groove then is gonna get what we'll call a button. And you can see it has a tongue that will go into that groove. And I'll make a series of these with holes in them so I can then put a screw in it, and the screw will get fastened to the bottom side of our top piece, allowing that wood movement. Now, the next point of concern I have is where the aprons come into the leg. And the joinery that I'm going to do for that is a mortise and tenon. So here we have the mortise that will be on the leg, and the tenon will be on the apron. Now, when I do my mortise and tenons, I like this part, which we'll call the cheek. I like that to fit more snug than the shoulder cut. Reason being is that traditionally, when this goes together, that wood again is going to expand and contract, and you'll want a little bit of movement in there. However, with today's modern glue, it's going to hold this so tight, it's not going to have that option to move back and forth. And I'm not really too concerned about it on a piece this small because it's not going to get as much movement as a large piece. However, traditionally, the way it was done to prevent that, and you have to consider they didn't have glue hundreds of years ago. Whoa, time out. They actually did have glue hundreds of years ago, or forms of it. They would use tar or pine resin. They even then would make hide glue, but it was timely and expensive. But today's modern glue is incredibly affordable, and it's stronger than ever. As you have a mortise and tenon, and you notice I have the hole in it. This will go in, and the holes are drilled offset. They're not in perfect alignment. Those holes now, I'm going to use a dowel pin, and when I drive it in, it's going to pull over. This is going to hold it tight from pulling out, but I still have the room for that to expand and contract. The other thing I need to focus on is what I'm going to do for the drawer. Now, I actually love to make dovetail drawers. Not only are they beautiful, but they're incredibly strong. When you pull it one direction, it actually wedges itself in there, getting tighter. But when you pull it the other direction, well, it can come apart. Now, making a dovetail, it can take some time and practice to master it. So another option you can do is a rabbet joint. The rabbet joint, when it goes together, it still has decent strength because of the shoulder it creates. And then with some glue and nails, it's going to hold just fine. So, just in summary, when you are building a piece, not only should it look good, but you want to make sure that you pick the right joinery so it lasts a long time. On today's episode, we covered the basics of furniture design. We made sure that it serves a purpose, that it has good construction, and that it looks nice. On the next episode, we're going to cover lumber selection in more detail, as well as proper ways to mill and prep for your next build. So make sure you click and subscribe and catch every episode of Helping You Make Wood Work.